another live Patriots Q A. Happy Friday. I'm Sierra Goodwill here with Evan Lazar. We're back again. Evan, how are you?
I'm doing well. It's Friday, so that's good. It's a little hot out today for me, but other than that,
It is. We got some Celtics basketball tonight. It's a
yes.
scrimmage, but still
And
exciting.
some Red Sox baseball too, Sierra. Don't forget.
Oh, right, their opener. That's probably a bigger deal. But it's feeling like things are happening, so that's exciting. As always, drop your questions in the live chat. We'll get to them as we go along here. To start off, we got a couple questions on Twitter early from our friend Leon. He said, what would you say is the one missing piece that would put the Patriots on the same level with the Chiefs and Ravens in the AFC?
Ooh, that's a good question. I would say it's really that bona fide stud pass catcher outside of Julian Edelman. You know, who's that guy? Can it be N'Keal Harry? Can it be somebody else that we're not expecting, like a Damari Bird or Jacoby Myers blossoms or Mohamed Sanu takes that step or whoever it may be? I think the thing that's separating them really truly from the Chiefs is that firepower on offense. Baltimore, maybe they can be a little bit more even with them this year. But I think in particular with Kansas City, it's Tyreek Hill, it's Travis Kelce, it's the weapons around Patrick Mahomes that really make that thing run.
And a quarterback on the same caliber as Lamar Jackson and Patrick Mahomes would be nice as well. There's still still some question marks. Still some question marks in that position for the Patriots for sure. But speaking of, Leon also asked, would you say Cam Newton is a better fit at quarterback than Tom Brady for the current wide receivers on this roster?
Another good question. I would say that the offense that you can run with Cam Newton might be a little bit better of a fit because you can be more a deceptive unit than a precision passing unit, right? You know, a team that uses a quarterback run element to scare the defense and take the defense and change the equation for them and gets misdirection plays going and gets, you know, different type of launch points for the quarterback where you're not exactly sure, is he going to be in the pocket? Is he going to be outside the pocket? I think that those types of elements with the receivers that they have, with the tight ends that they just drafted, that might all fit a little bit better where you're just kind of running into space. You might see a little bit more zone coverage at times than press man. Whereas with Brady, it really takes those Edelmans, the Amendolas, those precise route runners with great timing and great execution. And if you don't do that, then you get the offense that you had last year, right? Which is sloppy and a lot of, misguided type of stuff. So I think that there is a good argument to be made that this offense is built for a mobile quarterback. And obviously in this case, it's Cam.
It'll be fun to see here. Moving into the live chat now, we've got a couple questions. The first from Ashwin. Who do you expect to return kicks and punts this season?
Good question, Ashwin. I think that this is one of the things that we're going to decide in training camp and in the lead up to the season and maybe in the first couple weeks of the regular season is who's exactly going to be back there. I think on punts, and I know that maybe Belichick might not be 100% confident in him yet to put him back there because of ball security. We know that that's very important to Coach Belichick, but Kyle Duggar is a really dangerous punt returner. And if you can't get him on the field on defense because of the depth that they have at safety with those veteran guys with Chung and McCourty and Adrian Phillips and Terrence Brooks and all these guys that they have there that are longer in the tooth, then maybe the way to get him into the fold is by putting him on punt returns. And I think that would be really exciting element for a rookie. On kickoffs, that's a different question. I think that, last year they kind of put Brandon Bolden back there just to have somebody that was going to be protective of the football, get the yards out of it that they needed, but they knew that they weren't going to get explosive plays like they got with Cordell Patterson. So I think the biggest thing is that maybe they go with more of a speed guy back there. I would love if Jeff Thomas makes the roster. I would love to see him back on kickoffs and let somebody that has some true 4.3, 4.28 speed, maybe a guy like Damari Bird gets a chance to do it as well. Let's put somebody back there that could actually return one to the house or at least flip the field position a little bit and not just get the 25 yards out of Brandon Bolden.
Brady's asking, do you think Bill Murray will be like Danny Shelton? You said yesterday in our Countdown to Camp segment, you think he's the undrafted free agent with the best shot to make the roster given the unprecedented circumstances of this preseason. Are there comparisons there between the two?
I could see it a little bit. I think that the interesting thing with Danny Shelton was that he was always better getting vertical when he was penetrating the line of scrimmage. Where he kind of got lost a little bit in the Patriots system is when they made him sit there and just anchor as a two-gapper and just park his big keister right in the middle of the defense. that didn't work out as well for him, but he's really like a penetrating 4-3-3 tech, which is really unique for a guy that's 350 pounds. So maybe Bill Murray is a little bit more like Danny Shelton than maybe on the surface it kind of seems like, as a guy that is a little bit more of an aggressive, penetrating, one gapping style of defensive lineman versus somebody like a Vince Wilfork or, like an Alan Branch, who was always just plugging the middle and holding gaps and making sure that those linebackers are able to eat.
Well, you talked about it briefly with Kyle Duggar's potential on special teams, but the question is, what do you think Duggar's role could be on the defense, or do you think it's going to be more strictly special teams in his rookie year?
Well, early on, it's definitely going to be special teams. And the guy that I think is a great example of this is Chase Winovich, who last year in training camp and in the preseason had truly one of the best rookie preseason campaigns that I've ever seen. He was the highest graded defender, according to Pro Football Focus, in the entire preseason among all players, which is quite an accomplishment, even though it's not real football yet. I think that you look at that, and then you look at how long it kind of took him to carve out a role on defense, even though he was playing so well there in the preseason, that it tells you that it's going to take some time for these guys, right? And I think Kyle Duggar is probably going to be in a similar boat, where early on in the season, he's a contributor on special teams. He's making plays, he's returning punts, he's doing stuff like that. And you're saying, okay, this guy can really play. We just have to kind of find a spot for him. Then maybe later on in the year, maybe there's an injury, maybe there's an opportunity that opens up that allows him to get on the field on defense. We've talked a lot about where exactly he's going to play in the defense. And I think that's the most interesting thing for him in camp, is what I'll be watching with Duggar is he going to play deep safety? Is he going to play in the box like Patrick Chung, or is he going to play in more of a Duron Harmon, Devin McCourty type role in the middle of the field? That's where he played at Lionel Ryan as the deep zone defender. And really the box responsibilities started in the Senior Bowl when NFL teams, saw that 225-pound frame, and they're like, this is a perfect hybrid linebacker for today's NFL. He's strong, he's fast, he can cover guys in the slot and cover tight ends. So eventually I think that that's his opportune role, or it's his best possible role. But I think for now, he's probably going to have a lot of opportunity to play the deep middle.
The next two questions we have are essentially the same. Do you see a scenario where Brian Hoyer stays on the roster and the Patriots do choose to keep 3 QBs?
Well, I think that there are some scenarios. I think the biggest thing, though, is that it really is probably going to take an injury to Cam Newton or Jarrett Stidham to make Brian Hoyer, give Brian Hoyer a roster spot. Last year, Hoyer got beat out by Jarrett Stidham in camp and they cut him, right? And they didn't carry 3. So it was later on in the season, though, that they brought in Cody Kessler and they ended up going with 3 quarterbacks. And the one thing that Belichick said was that, when you have a veteran starter like Brady, who might be taking some time off or might be going only half speed at practice or only half the snaps at practice, then you have your starting quarterback or your first string quarterback in Stidham in that case, and then you need a scout team quarterback. So that's why it really makes it difficult to divvy up the snaps if you only have 2 guys sometimes. So maybe they do keep 3 so that they have that, starter, backup, scout team QB kind of in place, and they don't overwhelm a guy like Stidham with responsibilities on the starting offense and in the scout team offense as well.
We have a question here that we're going to be discussing in our Countdown to Camp segment coming out today. Do you think the new tight ends will be something similar to Gronk and Hernandez in their first season?
No. We need to cool the jets on this. All right. I think the biggest thing is that Gronk and Hernandez are truly generational talents. Gronk, obviously, I don't need to tell you why. With Hernandez, I've truly never seen a guy that size move as fluidly as Hernandez did. The ability to cut on a dime, the ability to make guys miss in the open field while as a ball carrier. I mean, at 6'4", 6'3", 250 pounds, that was truly a unique skill. Now, I do see a little bit of Dalton Keene, Aaron Hernandez and Dalton Keene, or vice versa, because of Dalton Keene's ability with the ball in his hands. But the route running, the ability to stick and kind of jab and cut on a dime I don't think it's really going to be there. So those 2 guys are generational talents. I wouldn't expect anything close to what they produced in their rookie seasons. I would look more to some of the more realistic options, like maybe a Mark Andrews as a rookie year, if you want to say this guy's going to have a breakout rookie year, or Dalton Knox had a pretty good rookie year for Buffalo last year. Maybe something like that in that 300 to 400 yard range is a little bit more realistic.
And you think the Patriots are still going with 3 tight ends on the roster?
think that that's probably safe. They can carry the two rookies. That's a given because they're not going to, expose those guys to waivers. So they're going to keep those guys on the roster. I think Matt Lacoste, I know that Matt Lacoste is not the most exciting player to people, but I think that he's a serviceable veteran at that spot. And until they really are in a position where those rookies can play more snaps, I could see Matt Lacoste taking some snaps early in the season as the starting tight end.
Stroll wants to know your thoughts on the recent rumors surrounding running back Devonta Freeman and the Patriots.
Well, I don't think Freeman's really a great fit here. I think that really when you look at a running back like that, his best days are probably behind him. Adding a guy with that much tread on the tires, I don't know if that's really the best course of action, especially with the depth that they have at that running back spot now. Now, if they are going to be more of an outside zone rushing team and run a lot more kind of zone read type of stuff, then Freeman does have some experience in that Kyle Shanahan offense in Atlanta with some of those concepts. But I really think that you can let another team overpay Devonta Freeman.
Do you think Marquise Lee makes the roster? We know there's a bunch of fringe wide receivers now, and it could go either way depending on how training camp goes.
This is a typical Patriots signing of a guy that's been hurt for the last couple of years, and you get him in the building and you hope that you can kind of reinvigorate that 2017, 2016 form where he was a solid receiver for Jacksonville. I think the biggest problem for Marquise Lee, though, is that he's really ideally in the slot. And to me, he's like a carbon copy of Mohamed Sanu, a guy that's going to play in the slot the majority of the time, but can also flex out wide some of the time and be a little bit versatile. They both aren't burners by any means. They're kind of mid 4-5 type of guys, but they have great route running, good technique, good hand strength, good power to kind of fight through contact and through the catch point. But to me, it seems like he's going to have to leapfrog not only Sanu, but probably Jacoby Myers too for that sort of role. And eventually, how many of those inside guys are you really going to have before all their route trees start to really overlap? And I think already Sanu's and Edelman's route trees overlap a little bit, and certainly Myers too. So I don't want to get too redundant if I'm the Patriots in that spot. And I think Marquise Lee has a pretty big long shot to make the roster right now.
Well, Doug wants to know what you've thought of Josh McDaniels' play calling over the last 2 seasons. He points out that the Patriots never really have obscene talent other than Gronkowski recently as a target on offense. So how do you feel he's done the last 2 years in his play calling?
Honestly, I think that Josh McDaniels gets a lot of flack for what's really ultimately been an issue with the personnel that he's been given over the last couple of years. Now, certainly, I think in the red zone, there were times where the schemes were a little bit dull or a little bit predictable, and he could have been maybe a little bit creative down there. And I think that some of the situational play calling at times was, a little bit suspect. But for the most part, with the offense that he was handed last year, think about all the different sort of things that he pulled out to try to get that offense to produce points, the trick plays. How many trick plays did the Patriots run last year? It was got to have been a dozen, double passes and reverses and, all sorts of different types of things that they tried to do just to manufacture offense. So I really think that he did a very good job of that, of scheming and finding ways to just get this offense to get in the end zone every once in a while, and it really turned into a situation where they had to be a little bit of smoke and mirrors because of what they were dealing with in the skill positions. And I think McDaniels really did the best that he had given the personnel that he was dealt by Belichick and by Caserio.
Well, Brady has a couple questions about training camp. First off, what offensive battle are you most excited for?
Ooh, good question. Well, I'm an offensive line guy, so I really do like the backup offensive linemen. I can't wait to see those guys, Cajuste, Froholt, the 3 guys they drafted this year, just to see what they have in that group, because it is a group that could potentially be thrusted into a starting role in some spots if it does come to that. One of the tackles goes down, then Yandi Cajuste might be the top guy there to fill in that 3rd tackle spot, or one of the interior guys go down. It's probably going to be a guy like Froholt, or maybe Illuminor sneaks in there, but I would think that they might go with one of the young guys. So I'm really intrigued to see how those backup offensive linemen develop and how they fit into the equation. But at the end of the day, I do think the sexy pick is probably Rex Burkhead versus Damian Harris. And let's see if Damian Harris can get on the field and see what he can do and produce if they do give him the opportunity.
And similarly, who do you think will be a standout offensively in training camp?
A standout offensively. I think Mohamed Sanu is ready for a big year.
Yeah.
I think that he's
I like
probably going to be the guy that's going to come in here, and he's really been working his ass off. And I think eventually that's going to pay dividends for anybody, especially a guy that does already have that functional base of talent that Sanu already does have. So I think that he's going to be the guy that outside of Edelman, I could really see him kind of taking this group under his wing and being like, last year was last year, and that's unacceptable to me and unacceptable to Edelman. And we're going to start this kind of year on a different note. And I could see him being a leader and sort of a tone setter for this group.
Gunnar Olszewski is a name was really popular last year in training camp. Everyone was like, who's that guy? I remember when we first saw Gunnar, and me, you, and Alex were trying to figure out who it was. And I overheard someone say his name. I was like, I think someone just called him Gunnar. And we were looking up anyone with the name Gunnar. We had no idea. And then he made the roster. He ended up being a good little piece for the Patriots. And recently we've heard that he's been looking good this off season and this preseason. So your thoughts on him and his chances of making this team again?
Gunner's a great story, and I wasn't on the bandwagon for a while. I was kind of like, let's stop this nonsense. But I will give him this. From the beginning of training camp, the first day that he got there to the end, his route running and his ability as a receiver improved a lot. And that was really impressive for a guy that really hadn't played receiver at all. I remember being down in Tennessee, watching him run one-on-ones against those Tennessee cornerbacks and being like, this is a different guy than we saw 3 weeks ago. He's really running much better routes, and he was getting open, creating separation with his technique, not just with his physical ability. So I think that Gunner has come a long way. I think on this team, though, in particular, there's a lot. I mentioned it earlier. There's just so many slot guys on this team that I think it's going to be really difficult for him to carve out that role. That Edelman's going to be there. That N'Keal Harry is going to be there. And you definitely think that Mohamed Sanu is going to be there. And really the other spots, they're going to have to fit in guys that can be a little bit more outside receivers, like a Damari Bird potentially, like a Jeff Thomas potentially. That to me is really, I think, where the sticking point is for Gunner is just, you don't really need his punt return value as much anymore because you got guys like Kyle Duggar who are now probably going to take over that role, and you don't necessarily need him in the slot. So it is a tough kind of battle for him this year, I think.
And we were hearing that camp rosters are probably going to be reduced to 80 players from 90. What players, in your estimation, will be released immediately?
Well, I think to me, the undrafted guys, and maybe there are a few like a Jeff Thomas, like a Bill Murray that they're excited about and they do want to see in camp. But I think a lot of these undrafted guys that they know are probably have a next to a 0% chance of making the roster, probably don't need to come to camp, right? And I think that ultimately, though, there are different kind of proposals out there. The main one is that reduced to 80, right? But I think the best one that I have heard is actually having a split squad thing where 45 guys are out there at a time. And so you can have 45 and 45. And that does give those undrafted guys, that does give those first year guys a little bit more of an opportunity to make a name for themselves. So I think that's more exciting to me than cutting it down to 80. Because at the end of the day, Sierra, is 10 less bodies at these practices really going to prevent somebody from catching COVID-19? I don't see that being the case. So it's kind of surprising to me that the league has gone in this direction, because you do need the depth this year more than ever, because you don't know if there's going to be an outbreak within your team. You don't know if somebody's going to pick up the virus a day before a game. You need that depth. And really, what are we saving here by taking 10 bodies off the field? I think that this is truly the owners saying, we don't have the money right now to carry 90-man rosters into training camp, so we're going to save a few pennies by cutting 10 guys before camp even starts.
Last question here before we wrap up. Week 1 versus Miami. Does Tua break the rookie curse against Bill?
I know it's been since Geno Smith in 2012, 2013, something like that, since anybody has beaten Belichick as a rookie quarterback. And Tua, I'm really excited to see him down in Miami. I'm more excited to see him than some of the other pieces that Miami's put together. And I'm hoping that he'll be the week 1 starter and he'll be healthy and ready to go for week 1. I think it just changes the whole equation for this division when you bring in a guy like that. And so I'm excited to see what happens. Do I think that he's going to break the curse? Probably not. I think that veteran defense is probably going to be flying around to a different level, even though they don't have the lead up. Those guys, a lot of it, especially in the secondary, that's massive carryover. That's the one spot the Patriots do have guys coming back. So I think that they're going to be ready to go. And I think it's going to be up to, really these other quarterbacks to get up to speed before they're going to be able to beat a defense like the Patriots.
Well, that will do it for another live Patriots.
Wait a second. What is Mike Giardi's obsession with my insightful tweets? I do want to know the answer to that question as well.
Oh, I didn't see that come in. I would have asked that.
Yeah.
Earlier on in the live chat, someone offered to troll Mike Giardi with their burner for you. So you've got people on your side, Evan, on the Twitter.
I don't know where that came from. I was like, I need a hobby. Like, this is my hobby. What do you mean?
Oh my God, I love it. Anyways, we'll be back here next week, same time, same place, Tuesday and Friday at 1 p.m. Eastern. In the meantime, catch all of our Countdown to Camp segments on our YouTube channel here at Patriots Press Pass for all of the camp battles and burning questions. We'll have all your answers there. So don't forget to subscribe so you never miss our daily content and all of our live streams that we do twice a week. We'll see you on Tuesday.